Hello and welcome. In this video I'll be opening up all of the containers I have, including the Christmas and I believe Black Friday containers. Just so that you're aware, the premium containers were given to me by Wargaming. I presume that they did it so that I would open them while showing it to you guys, but as always we are never told to do anything with the stuff we get. It's completely up to us. I opened these boxes on stream, all 121 of them. While I was streaming, I wanted to be lazy and record it as though I was going to be making a video, but it turns out that opening 121 of these boxes took over 20 minutes. Nobody wants to sit there and watch me open boxes for 20 plus minutes. What they want is to hear me talk, so I'll be speeding up the opening of boxes. Note that many of these will just be normal containers. First, I'd like to give some feedback on the Christmas boxes in particular. I think the boxes are ugly. They seem low quality. Maybe my game was bugged or something, but the textures on these Christmas boxes looked low resolution. The sound effect was completely out of sync with opening the actual boxes, and some of the textures look like they have artifacts, the black spots, but I'm pretty sure those are actually intended. Anyways, my opinion of the look of the boxes is poor. Wargaming should have done a much better job with this, especially compared to what their content looks like normally. Moving on, during the stream we talked about loot boxes and I gave my opinion on them. I have an opinion on these that many people seem to disagree with, because I'm not actually against loot boxes. I mean, I don't like loot boxes myself, but I think people are taking this problem too far. I'm of the opinion that people should vote with their wallet. If they don't like loot boxes, then they shouldn't buy them. If this becomes an unpopular and unprofitable business practice, then companies will stop doing it. I think that regulation is not the answer. In fact, I think that regulation is going to be more harmful to the games industry than not regulating them. I know, some people will think I'm a monster for this because think of the children! And that's a good point to start with. I think that loot boxes are not a major problem when dealing with children because loot boxes cost money, and children don't earn their own money. Parents control the money children have, which means that it is the parents' job to pay attention to what their child spends their money on. I dislike it that many parents are offloading parenting duties onto the government. They demand that the government ban things so that they have to do less parenting. I think that parents should, well, parent, and if they control what their kid spends money on, then those kids can't really buy loot boxes, can they? I'm also unconvinced about how big of a problem it is to let children gamble, occasionally at least, because when I was in high school, it wasn't that rare that people would play poker or some other games for money. That is gambling, but was it really that harmful? I'm not sure. Actually, I should have started with what gambling is usually or often defined as. Usually, gambling means that somebody is playing a game of luck for real money or items of value with a chance of losing. Oh, one other thing. Maybe the reason why I don't feel so strongly about gambling is because I used to work as a slot machine developer. Maybe that has desensitized me to anything gambling, because when I look at something and see a slot machine-like behavior, I'm rather unimpressed, because during work I had to mess around so much with them that they're unimpressive for me. Although I do think that my indifference towards gambling actually preceded me working on slot machines. For those who are unaware, slot machines are basically games where you pull a lever and then a bunch of numbers will start spinning on the screen, and when you get the right combination of them, you win something. Loot boxes for me are slot machine-like things. Now, somebody might go, alright, this settles it then, loot boxes are gambling. But not so fast. You see, many other things are also like slot machines for me. Opening Magic the Gathering packs for example, or opening a Kinder Surprise. For the Americans, a Kinder Surprise is a chocolate egg with a little plastic toy inside. Apparently these are illegal in the US. Even a game like Diablo has slot machine-like components in them from my point of view. When you're playing Diablo, or a game like Diablo, and kill Diablo or some other boss in the game, then you're basically pulling the lever of a slot machine. The drops are random, just like the outcome of a round of slots. Yet we don't really consider Kinder Surprises or Diablo's loot system to be gambling, do we? But the underlying mechanism and even the psychological effects they work by are the same. They are banking on you wanting that big fat loot drop and trying to entice you to play more. In fact, there's one interesting tidbit many people don't consider in regards to gambling. Gambling in most countries requires that you spend real money on it. Let's imagine that you're standing in front of the slot machine, you've entered credits or real money into it, you pull the lever, you're undoubtedly gambling right now, and this is illegal for children to do. However, take the exact same slot machine and remove the real money aspect, that is, use fake money, and when you pull the lever, then it's not gambling, and children in many countries can do that. It's the exact same game, but what's different is that you're not playing for real money. Surely the psychological effects are the same, or at least very similar, because you're dealing with the same game, right? But the law says that this is not gambling. It does so for a good reason, otherwise games like Diablo might also be considered gambling, as would many other things. In fact, gambling is a rather interesting thing where the government is concerned. It's seen as morally wrong by many people, and they think that the government should do something about it. And the government does something about it. They will add restrictions or raise taxes or something like that. People then cheer. There's one thing most of them don't consider though. Often it's the government that's the biggest, or at least one of the biggest gambling establishments. Most lotteries are owned by governments in some form or another, and somehow that same entity is the one that writes rules for all the other gambling establishments, while also competing against those same gambling establishments. I'm sure there's nothing fishy going on there at all. Basically, the people who think gambling is wrong and want the government to do something about it are going to be left disappointed because the government is the one providing gambling services in the first place. Well, some of them anyway. One other thing, I don't quite understand why games are painted as being evil, or at least in a bad light if they try to use tricks to keep you playing for longer. People often imply that this kind of manipulation itself is evil, but I don't quite buy this argument, because if you look at life at large, you'll see that this kind of manipulation is common. It's a rather basic strategy to get people to do basically anything. A good teacher gets kids interested in a topic that they otherwise wouldn't be interested in. How do they do that? By enticing them in all kinds of ways. They'll start out with topics the kids would care about and then eventually move over to the topics they're trying to teach. Hopefully at that point the kids are already engaged enough that they don't notice the bait and switch. If they do this long enough, kids will become interested in the topic on their own, and that's basically the same type of manipulation as the games do. The objective is different, but that's only because you assume the teacher is trying to teach them something useful. Honestly, I would argue that me playing basically any video game has been more useful in my life than any of my art history classes or music history classes that I had to take, because I don't really remember any of it. Anyways, I think I've wandered off on some slight tangents. Let's get back to the topic. The reason I don't want the government to get involved through legislation, or basically anything, is because the government never stops when you want them to stop. People might be asking the government to deal with loot boxes in video games, but if the government actually starts regulating these things, I can pretty much guarantee that we won't simply get rid of loot boxes. Remember, the crowd that went "video games cause violence"? Those people didn't go away, they're still there, but they simply aren't taken seriously on those points. But if we ask the government to oversee our video games, then they might want to get involved too. For example, let's say that people are successful and politicians agree that loot boxes are gambling, and that we must think of the children. Well, next thing you know, the politicians are pushing for a bill that will require every game to get rated by a government office. Initially, maybe the only thing they look at is how the game is monetized, but eventually it's guaranteed that there will be other criteria at play, such as how violent the game is. This solution would absolutely get rid of loot boxes, but the collateral damage is the freedom to choose which games we want to play. Just look at Australia. They have a system where the government must rate games before they can be sold, and as a result there are plenty of games that are banned in Australia. For example, Saints Row 4, the Postal games, some Silent Hill game, the South Park game. I think they even banned some DLC for The Witcher. I'm sorry Australians, but that's not exactly what I'd like to have happen where I live. And because of that, I am very, very wary when people want the government to be involved. Would you want the government that runs the DMV to be in charge of deciding which games you can play? Probably not, right? In fact, we even have an example of this whole loot box thing already causing collateral damage. Where did this loot box drama start at? Or which games? It was Battlefront and some single player game I can't remember, right? That's what everyone was complaining about. And the Dutch decided that loot boxes are gambling. However, which games did they actually go after? They went after games like Dota 2. Games that nobody had problems with, well, some games anyway. Because the loot boxes were for completely cosmetic things. The government doesn't care what people want, or at least what gamers want, because politicians love the think of the children rhetoric. It's an easy way for them to score bonus points, and it allows them to later say, look, I protected our children, vote for me. So in conclusion, I really urge people to reconsider on whether they actually want the government involved in regulating video games. You'll probably get more than you bargained for, in a bad way, and there won't be an easy way to undo it. I think people should simply vote with their wallet. If you don't like loot boxes, don't buy them. The practice will go away on its own if enough people don't like it. Now, if you're wondering why I showed you a video of me opening boxes, it's because for some reason people seem to like this kind of thing. I don't understand this myself because I've never watched unboxing videos, but here you are. Anyways, in a few hours I'll put up another video where I'll actually be playing the game. It'll be the video that caps off the ranked sprint season, the last one, with a rather amazing match. Also, there might be videos and clips of Path of Exile in the near future. So, see you in the next one. Also, why was this thing so damn long? I don't understand.